before you started the business, right before you start jumping into doing this, you were with SWAT and you said undercover narcotics.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what was the dynamic that you and your wife had, and how did that change after you left that and started this journey?
Our dynamic was great. I mean,
Mm.
we had an amazing marriage, and really, I think I could legitimately count on you know two hands, maybe even one hand, how many arguments, like legitimate yelling, shouting, like angry arguments we had at that time. And that was, we were married in 2006. So tomorrow will
Oh
be
wow!
actually 17 years married, my wife and I.
Congratulations, man! Happy almost
Yeah,
anniversary.
thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Wow.
Tomorrow. Yeah. So we had a great marriage. My wife didn't particularly like what I was doing just simply because, like all first responder spouses, they worry every single time you go on shift. They really worry, and there had been more than a few times where things were a little bit dicey, and just out of pure love and concern for her husband and what every first responder spouse feels like, she didn't like it because of that worry.
Mhm.
Was very supportive about it, and I really felt like I was doing something that was really spoke to me as a person. When I look at my childhood, because I had so many restarts and resets, and just always had this start stop, but it would work itself out, and we would just figure it out. I developed this personality of being very even keeled. Like, things don't get me excited. It's very hard to get me riled up.
Yeah.
And when it comes to really dynamic, uncertain circumstances that you experience in special operations, being very even keeled and being able to keep a level head and make clear decisions under stress is obviously critically important. And so that is part of my superpower. One of the superpowers that came from my childhood is that ability to really thrive in really dynamic, stressful environments. But um, I loved what I was doing at that time and wasn't looking for a way out. I did question whether or not I would be able to actually retire from the profession, because it was very evident the way that the profession was trending. This was before all of the defund the police related stuff, but it was certainly trending that direction where the administration was feeling the pressure from all the politicians and everybody
Totally.
that's involved with politics. But yeah, we had a great thing going. She had a great job that she had been at for a long time. She had worked her way up there, and that all changed pretty soon after we opened the business. So because of the stress of the business.
Did you guys have a is either of your high up on your personal needs, like security? Because
Mhm.
going from having everything be like cool, consistent paycheck, you both
Mhm.
have solid jobs, to hey,
Mhm.
we're gonna run a business. And I was listening to one of your podcasts,
Mhm.
and you were talking, you were like, yeah, and like you're very much an action taker. You're very
Mhm.
much someone who's gonna go out and do the thing. So you come to your wife and you're like, hey, here's the plan, and we can sleep here and we could do this, and like I imagine that changed the dynamic. I imagine that process was difficult. Am I right in saying that?
Totally. Yeah. My wife and I, our upbringing was very different. Her parents, didn't uh, so much as separate or probably even sleep in different bedrooms when she was growing up. Right. They're still married to this day, and so her upbringing was very stable, very predictable in a lot of ways, and that is definitely her comfort zone. Where she is most comfortable is to understand what's ahead, and to be able to see clearly anything that could compromise the current status quo, you might say. She is much better. She is light years better today than she was back then. But back then, it was definitely, we know when the paychecks are going to hit the account. We know how much there's going to be. We know that the pathway. I mean, I could tell you based on the pay scale of the sheriff's office exactly how much I would make at every level, up to and including the top highest level, which would be the sheriff itself. Like, it was all
Wow.
planned.
Yeah.
We didn't understand back then that we were really living in a box with a glass ceiling over it as far as what our potential was. But as soon as I got this nibble at entrepreneurism, and my entire mindset started shifting to going that direction, all of a sudden my wife felt that stability and security, um, become unraveled. And
Yeah.
that's where she began to kind of freak out. But she took the path of, she trusted me, she believed in me, but she did not want to look at the monster in the room. And if I don't look at the monster in the room, it doesn't exist, right? So she
Mm,
just kind of buried her
okay.
head and let me do my thing. But otherwise, knowing too much about it, just it was just caused too much uncertainty and
Yeah.
freaked her out. So I kind of did my thing, and she did hers, and it worked out well for me because, being somebody who's like an action taker, my foot's firmly on the gas, I didn't have to worry about her like putting the brakes on anything or asking too many questions. So I embraced the fact that she was just kind of turning a blind eye to it and hoping and praying that everything was going to work out.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Um, did that time, because I'm assuming it's not like that now. So at
No.
some point that changed. When did that change and what happened?
Well, um, we experienced some real hardship the first couple of years of that business. And it wasn't even until like rounding out our third year, we owned it for 5, where um, things started to change. So, you know,
Wow.
just continued to erode at all of the things that we had worked our lives to build together. As the months went on of owning this business, again, it wasn't the business model that was the issue. It wasn't the team. It wasn't the clients. It really absolutely boiled down to me being an ineffective leader. And I was learning that taking the fake it till you make it path and not being authentic was was not serving me or anybody else well. Um, and so we were systematically seeing this erosion of any of the savings that we had in the 2 homes that we had built, and most importantly, the relationship that we had was all eroding. And all of a sudden, you know, we're fighting all the time. There's no connection there between us. Um, Everything that we say to each other ends up in some sort of either passive aggressiveness, or it just was not a fun time to be married. My weight had shot up. I was, two, like 210 or something. I shot up to like 260, and and then our bank accounts were just dwindling. I mean, we were robbing Peter to pay Paul. But the problem is, people would ask me how I was doing. They would ask me how business was, and I would tell them it's awesome. I tell them the family's great, business is
Yeah.
great, being an
Yeah.
entrepreneur is the coolest. And I was so afraid of just stepping into being authentic and having the real conversations, that nobody was able to help me. Nobody was able to to understand what was going on. But because I was trying to protect my ego. Pride was getting in the way, and at the expense of that pride and ego was my marriage nearly dissolving, uh, almost filing for bankruptcy, virtually losing, being able to raise my son alongside my wife
Yeah.
so yeah, it was tough there for a little bit. Your question is based on the other side of it, all
Yeah.
of the when we rounded the corner, but we had to get through some real struggle before we made it to that point.